Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1269 of the Juicebox Podcast. So Christi has 4 kids. They all have different autoimmune issues. Looks like her youngest son has type 1. Her husband and herself have other autoimmune. We talk about a lot of stuff in this episode. You're going to love this. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year supply of vitamin D. Drink ag1.com/juicebox. Hey, you like wearing comfortable stuff, sleeping on comfortable sheets, drying off with beautiful towels? If you're that kind of person, CozyEarth.com. Use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. Save 40% off of your entire order. If you've taken a quiz to find out what gossip girl you are or what Hogwarts house you belong in, and you haven't gone to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and completed the survey, you're personally hurting my feelings. You have questions? Scott and Jenny have answers. There are now 19 Ask Scott and Jenny episodes. That's where Jenny Smith and I answer questions from the audience. If you'd like to see a list of them, go to juiceboxpodcast.com, up into the menu, and click on Ask Scott and Jenny. Today's episode is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes, a company that's bringing together people who are redefining what it means to live with diabetes. Later in this episode, I'll be speaking with Mark. He was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 28. He's 47 now. He's going to tell you a little bit about his story. And then at the very end of the episode, you can hear my entire mini interview with Mark. To hear more stories from the Medtronic Champion community or to share your own story, visit medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox and check out the Medtronic Champion hashtag on social media. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Get your supplies the same way we do from US Med. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox.
Hi, my name is Christi, and my son Silas is 11 years old. He is a type 1 diabetic, diagnosed 2 years ago tomorrow.
2 years ago tomorrow? It's February of 2024. How old is he again?
He's 11. So he was 9. Yeah.
He was diagnosed.
I know you struggle with math. So
no, I mean 2 years. If I can't do the math on 2 years, I'm in trouble. Silas, that's an interesting name. Is it a family name?
No.
Where'd you get it?
It's not. The Bible.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Which one? The old one or the new one? I don't really know.
The new one.
The new one?
Yeah, he's Paul's buddy. Missionary.
Hold on. Sorry, used a lot of words just there. Like, I actually just thought, can I call this episode Paul's Buddy? Maybe.
Possibly.
Yeah. But you mentioned it so early on. It's, I don't like doing that like that.
No,
also, by the way,
better.
Not for nothing, Christi, you then said Paul's Buddy and missionary all at the same time. And then I was like, I don't want to say anything inappropriate. So I I stopped thinking about it. Okay. Sorry. Do you have any other kids?
Yes. He's our youngest. We have 4.
Wow. Okay. Your youngest is 11. How old are you?
I'm 44.
Are you done with the kid you're making?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Okay. How old's the oldest?
She's 18.
Oh, wow.
She's a senior in high school.
Any other autoimmune with the kids?
Well, now that I've learned a lot about autoimmune stuff, the answer is everybody has something. Our 16-year-old, he's the first one who had anything. He's had asthma, like just not bad, but like, when he would get sick since he was little. And then right around when Silas was diagnosed with type 1, our daughter, who's 18, she's our only girl, she started getting hives horribly, like horrible hives. Was diagnosed with chronic hives. A few months later, she's on Zolar injections. They can't figure out what it is, but we're guessing it's autoimmune. I mean, that makes the most sense. And then Beckett, our 13-year-old, he has 2 autoantibodies and is last August, they said he was in stage 2, but I've just been doing fasting blood sugars and they've all been really like in the 70s and 80s. So
okay,
he'll redo that in May because they want him to do a clinical trial.
right.
So he'll redo that in May. And I'm kind of doubting that he's eligible. They thought he was, but
for like Tzield or something like that.
no, it's a new one. Oh gosh, I should have known you were going to ask me this. It is through TrialNet, and it's some drug that they give to kidney transplant patients.
Okay.
I can't remember what it's called.
I'll see if I can figure that out while I bring up something else.
Okay.
Hold on a second. Let's do this first. TrialNet. I was going to try to type and talk about something different. I'm like, I don't think my intelligence goes that far. I tried TrialNet and kidney to see if I could get something. ATG onset.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. TrialNet.org if you want to learn more. But I want to go to your daughter for a second.
Sure.
So my son, Arden was diagnosed when she was 2. And Cole's about, I don't know how old he is, 5 years older than her. I don't know how old he is. I just had to remember how old my kids were. So Arden's diagnosed when she's 2. Cole's 5 years older. And we don't know anything about autoimmune issues as we're raising a young family. Although if I look back now, my wife's grandmother has celiac, some people with like irritable bowel in her life. There's a person with bipolar distance away, some depression, like stuff that as you hear people talking more and more, you hear kind of clustered together around people with autoimmune issues. Anyway, my son during COVID was going to school at home. That was fun, by the way. Any of you who have ever sent money to a college and then watched your kid Zoom, you're like, can I get my money back, please? He's getting through that season. And he says, as soon as I'm done these last tests, I'm going to start working out again. And, he started talking about stuff he was going to do for baseball. And he, finished up all of his testing. It was definitely a stressful time. He disappeared into the basement to start working out. And a couple of days later comes running up the stairs covered in hives. And we couldn't figure out what was going on. So you do all the things that you think, at first it feels like a thing is just not going to happen again. And then you see it happen again. He's working out again. He breaks out again. You go to a dermatologist because that seems to be the way to go. They treat for all the things they know how to do. You probably went all through this. They probably gave her a cocktail of like over-the-counter antihistamine, stuff like that, right? It didn't do anything. And then we started talking about Xolair and injections. And oh my God, he's got a chronic hive issue, etc. And then one night I was up late online trying to figure out what was wrong with him. And I hit on this NIH article that mentioned that a very uncommon thing that you see with people with hypothyroidism is hives. And so we contacted our endocrinologist who put him on Tirosint, which is like Synthroid, but a different brand because Arden already used Tirosint. And his hives went away and he's been fine ever since.
The nice thing about our allergist is that she is with our endocrinologist. Nice. So they knew all of Silas's history. So they tested her for thyroid. I asked them to test her for celiac.
Yeah.
And everything came back normal. And thankfully, because I've been listening to you, I knew what normal was.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, do I wish she had thyroid? No, but all of that's normal.
Her TSH is under 2 even. Wow. Yeah. I'm so sorry. I wish it was an easy answer. How long has she been taking the injectable?
About 1.5 years.
Does it work?
So she also takes an antihistamine and Zantac with the cocktail of all 3 of those. It works. But their desire was that she would be able to wean herself off of the oral meds and just do the injections. And that has not happened.
So she needs the injection and the oral, over the counter, but oral medication too.
Yeah. It was, if you saw it was horrific. I could not believe the poor thing. The hives were so bad.
My gosh.
Yeah. So that's been a little bit more, type 1 at least is pretty cut and dry. They go in, they prick your finger, they say this is what it is. And, then you start treating it. But the hives have been a bit of a challenge.
If you take insulin or sulfonylureas, you are at risk for your blood sugar going too low. You need a safety net when it matters most. Be ready with Gvoke HypoPen. My daughter carries Gvoke HypoPen everywhere she goes because it's a ready-to-use rescue pen for treating very low blood sugar in people with diabetes ages 2 and above that I trust. Low blood sugar emergencies can happen unexpectedly, and they demand quick action. Luckily, Gvoke HypoPen can be administered in 2 simple steps, even by yourself in certain situations. Show those around you where you store Gvoke HypoPen and how to use it. They need to know how to use Gvoke HypoPen before an emergency situation happens. Learn more about why Gvoke HypoPen is in Arden's Diabetes Toolkit at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used if you have a tumor in the gland on the top of your kidneys called a pheochromocytoma, or if you have a tumor in your pancreas called an insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk for safety information. You've probably heard me talk about US Med and how simple it is to reorder with US Med using their email system. But did you know that if you don't see the email and you're set up for this, you have to set it up. They don't just randomly call you, but I'm set up to be called if I don't respond to the email because I don't trust myself 100%. So one time I didn't respond to the email and the phone rings at the house. It's like, ring, you know how it works. And I picked it up. I was like, hello. And it was just the recording. It was like, US Med. Doesn't actually sound like that, but you know what I'm saying. It said, hey, I don't remember exactly what it says, but it's basically like, hey, your order's ready. You want us to send it? Push this button if you want us to send it. Or if you'd like to wait, I think it lets you put it off like a couple of weeks, or push this button for that. That's pretty much it. I pushed the button to send it, and a few days later, box right at my door. That's it. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Get your free benefits checked now and get started with US Med. Dexcom, Omnipod, Tandem, Freestyle. They've got all your favorites. Even that new eyelet pump. Check them out now at usmed.com/juicebox or by calling 888-721-1514. There are links in the show notes of your podcast player and links at juiceboxpodcast.com to US Med and to all of the sponsors. Yeah, no, I as we were considering them as a possibility that something my son was going to live with, I found it much more overwhelming than diabetes to think about. And it's maybe weird to think, but because it seems so, if your blood sugar gets high or low, you know why. You know what I mean? But
right.
Like the hives, they appear to come out of nowhere and for no reason that you can discern. So it's scary. Yeah.
Well, and they tell her, they're like, they could go away at any time. Like, great. Well, that'd be nice if that happened.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Or you find some poor kid online on YouTube who's like, I've been living in this bed for 3 years because of my, my breakouts and stuff like that. My son his trigger was getting warm. So yeah, for people who haven't heard me say it before, he spent like months in his bedroom with the windows open in the middle of winter trying to keep his body temperature down. He couldn't like exercise or get moving or like even get excited or laugh. All these things would make him break out. It was really crazy. So
yeah, that's been the weird part is that when she was little, she would get hives, like a heat rash. And then anytime she got a virus, she would get hives at the end of it, which is also pretty normal. So when it first came up, we were like, oh, you must have just had a virus, or something like that. But they just didn't go away this time. So I think she's always been prone to them. They also did the allergy testing on her back and everything, including the saline.
She was allergic to the saline?
She was allergic. Yeah, they just said that she's got some hyperreactive skin. Wow. So every single, Yeah. So I said, well, should we change detergent? They said, well, it doesn't really matter. Like, oh, okay. Well,
my son has some allergies too, like, pets, hay fever, stuff like that. He can be real susceptible to. And I had terrible allergies as a child that just kind of went away at one point in my life.
Yeah, that's how my husband is. Yeah.
Yeah, I could never explain it, but I was a person, I couldn't go outside during the summer sometimes. And then one day in my late teens, it just stopped. It was really crazy.
That's great.
Yeah. Anyway, that's not why you're here. I don't know why you're here, but that's not why. Let me take a look here. I can look. TrialNet, advocating, managing a superactive kid. With Omnipod 5, being a foster parent in the mindset of type 1 diagnosis, 23andMe. Maybe I don't want to talk about that. It says, okay, so Sorry.
Whatever you want.
Well,
of that cocktail.
These children, some of them are foster kids?
Not anymore. So
you gave them back, or you
months,
did a rent to buy? What are we talking about?
So before Silas's diagnosis, we've been involved for a long time with foster care adoption organization, and helped with just supporting families who had foster children, like bringing meals and helping with, I don't know that we ever did childcare, but mostly helping with food, because feeding a lot of kids is, very hard. Then a sibling set of 4 came up that needed help. My husband and I both felt like they were supposed to come to us. So we started that. It wasn't through like the state or anything. It was just through relationships. And this, basically their aunt had taken them in because their situation was really bad. Mostly neglect. And then it had just become a lot for her for some different reasons. And we stepped in, but in the midst of all of it, Silas gets diagnosed with type 1, which was wild. So we started the process in December, and he got diagnosed in February. And then we ended up taking them in May, and we had them for 8 months. And then they went back to their aunt. She was at a better spot to care for them. But now they're back with their mom, which is not great. But the court was never involved. So her rights were never removed. She just abandoned them, basically. But because it wasn't, the courts were involved in that, like we had guardianship of them, but she was never, like DFACS was never involved, I should say.
Right.
So, or whatever you call it in, every state's different. Anyway, so we're in the Atlanta suburbs, but the children are now back with her in Portland, Oregon.
I see.
Which is hard. So they're really far away now. But yeah, it was the hardest. 2022 was just really hard. Really hard. With all that.
You're in the middle of trying to do something really kind, and then the diabetes comes at you, and it's a lot. Jeez, it would have been a lot. It would have been a lot to take on 4 children if you didn't have children. Seriously.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It was, I really had a hard time deciding what to do after Silas's diagnosis. But we thought, well, we'll just give it a shot. We didn't know very much. We really didn't know anything. Your podcast was an absolute godsend, because I literally knew nothing. Then I knew we had all this potentially happening. And so I knew the priority was his health. Like, that has been the priority from the very beginning. I'm like, I'll do everything. I'm going to do everything I can that my kids outlive me, Yeah. And I want him to be able to do all the things. He's an incredible human, and he loves to go at life 100%, every single thing he does. So I didn't want any of that to stop. So I was like, how are we going to do all this? And then what ended up happening is he did great. His A1C has been under 6 since his original diagnosis. He's been he has not slowed down a bit. But then we added these 4 children who he actually loved. They were right around his age. He had a blast with them. But because I also have some like autoimmune stuff. And so I've been basically in remission for the last 13 years. And I could feel that I know what I have to do to keep myself healthy. Yeah. And I could just feel things like my pinky swelling up randomly, and myself, I could feel things happening to me because I couldn't take care of myself. Basically.
Yeah. Do you have lupus or?
So it's a nonspecific connective tissue disorder that they think probably is the beginning of lupus that just never got. Like, I have mild kidney disease, and then I did have like joint issues, dry mouth, dry eye, which I still have, but those are just like annoying. They're not that, big of a deal. And I was on Plaquenil for like 2 years, I guess. And then we wanted to have another child. It was during my second pregnancy that it all happened. And then we wanted to have another child. So we did all the consults and everything. And all the doctors were like, yeah, I think you're fine to do it. So I went off with Plaquenil, and that pregnancy, something happened and everything just kind of turned around. And after that, like, I haven't taken a steroid. I haven't been on Plaquenil. I haven't done anything other than just diet, exercise, get enough sleep, try to alleviate stress. And that, of course, is very challenging when you have 8 children, one of them being diabetic and 4 of them being
When did the hives start, by the way? Was the hives after this? Was the hives before or after the time of thinking about taking on 4 more kids?
For my daughter?
Yeah.
They really started when Silas got diagnosed. So it was right in the middle of everything.
So her stress went up and then she had this.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, her stress. It was definitely stress related the trigger. For sure. Mm-hmm.
All right. What made you want to be on the podcast?
Well, primarily just to say thank you.
Oh.
Yeah.
We can turn this into a receiving
reason.
We can turn the podcast into a receiving line. That'd be nice. Right now, we're going to hear from a member of the Medtronic Champion community. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes. And this is Mark.
I used injections for about 6 months, and then my endocrinologist in the Navy recommended a pump.
How long had you been in the Navy?
8 years up to that point.
I've interviewed a number of people who have been diagnosed during service, and most of the time they're discharged. What happened to you?
I was medically discharged. Yeah, 6 months after my diagnosis.
Was it your goal to stay in the Navy for your whole life, your career?
It was. Yeah. In fact, I think a few months before my diagnosis, my wife and I had that discussion about, staying in for the long term. And, we'd made the decision despite all the hardships and time away from home. That was what we loved the most.
Was the Navy a lifetime goal of yours?
Lifetime goal. I mean, as my earliest childhood memories were flying, being a fighter pilot.
How did your diagnosis impact your lifelong dream?
It was devastating. Everything I had done in life, everything I'd worked up to that point was just taken away in an instant. I was not prepared for that at all.
What does your support system look like?
Friends, your family, caregivers, for me, the Medtronic Champions community, all those resources that are out there help guide the way, but then help keep abreast on, the new things that are coming down the pipe and to give you hope for eventually that we can find a cure.
And you can hear more stories from Medtronic Champions and share your own story at medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox.
And because what I found is that because of everything, because I had the outlet of being able to listen to the podcast, the podcast is nice because you don't have to really change anything. You know what I mean? I didn't have to take a bunch of time to this sounds bad. I like to read, but I didn't have to take a bunch of time to sit down and read a book or call the doctor's office constantly. I just listened as I drove and learned. And in the season that was so busy and so overwhelming, I felt like I was continuing to expand my understanding of how to manage Silas's care. And there is this everybody experiences this, but I had such mom guilt when he was diagnosed. Mm-hmm. And listening to the podcast and having so many people tell the same story helped me just free myself from that, because I was like, oh, this is kind of what happens to everybody when their kid's diagnosed. It's all the same story. And I think you giving people the space to share that really helped us let go of those feelings.
Oh, I'm so happy. That's excellent. Mm. It's interesting because everybody's story is so similar at its core, and then you let them kind of blow it up and tell the rest of it. And you go, oh, that's a detail. And that makes it entertaining enough to carry a podcast. You know what I mean? Because if we just had somebody come on once a week and was like, I had to pee a lot and then this happened. And they you'd be like, oh my, I've heard this already. So trying to keep it fresh by letting people tell bigger stories and get more down into the details and stuff like that, I think has been valuable. But I'm glad it helped you. I really am. Where did you find it?
So Abby, she was on, I wrote down what episode she was on. Episode 573.
Wow.
About adoption.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So my husband used to direct a family camp, a summer family camp. And she and her family were campers. So, and then when Silas was diagnosed, she reached out to us over Facebook. And because I posted something, I think, right after he was diagnosed. And she responded and said, you have to listen to this podcast. Start with the newly diagnosed or starting over. Mm-hmm. So she just sent me right in the right direction. So I think, right from day one.
Is she the curly redhead?
Yes.
Oh, look at my memory. Hey, hold on a second. That's amazing. No, let's take a minute. That's pretty impressive. I've interviewed, that was back in November of 2021. And I don't know why. Did we do it over video? Maybe that's why I remember what she looks like. Huh. That's interesting. Listen, Christi, don't let anybody take this the wrong way, okay? but I make this podcast like fast and furiously. So if you said to me, hey, Scott, what were last week's episodes about? I honestly, off the top of my head, don't know. But they were also recorded like 6 months prior to that. And so like, you know what I mean? Like I'm like so far ahead of the podcast that I don't really remember it sometimes. And so I'm sometimes the worst person to ask about it. They're like, you know, what episode's about this? And I'm like, I have no idea. I was just very pleased with myself that I remember that. So anyway, I'm glad she shared it. Hello to her if she's listening. So basically, this is through the adoption thing that you found this.
I mean, she just did happen to adopt, but no, the camp my husband directed was just for any families.
Oh,
anybody.
Oh, okay. No kidding.
Just families. It's like a resort. It's nice. It's not like what you think of a camping.
No, it's a camp, like camping. Or is it glamping? So,
right.
Yeah. Gotcha.
It's a little different, but it's a great place.
Nice.
It's called Pine Cove.
What's it called? Pine Cove?
Pine Cove, Chimney Point is the camp we were in.
Very nice.
They're in Texas and in like the Georgia, South Carolina border.
Nice.
Yep.
Are you from Atlanta originally?
I'm from Oklahoma.
I was going to say, you don't sound like you're from there. So I was trying to figure out what was going on. Did he drag you there or did you just move there of your own free will?
He's from Illinois, actually. So we met working at a different camp in Missouri. It's like halfway between both of our homes. Met and lived there for a little bit. And then we ended up in Atlanta for a job and just never left.
Oh, very nice. Yeah. My son just left Atlanta saying, and I'm not directly quoting, but I hate it here. I have to go. So
yeah. I mean, we live in the suburbs. It's definitely different out here, but we lived in Texas before we lived here. And that's kind of that's what feels the most like home to me.
Really? That's interesting. Whereabouts in Texas? Like what part?
Fort Worth.
Okay. That's interesting. I don't know. I liked it where he was. It seemed safe and everything, but he's like, I don't think he's a city person. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Oh, I totally. And it's a monster and the traffic's atrocious and, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
There's no good public transportation. So it's just
I know when people complain about traffic at places, they're like, oh, the traffic's bad everywhere. But Atlanta's its own different animal.
Yeah, it's a special.
Really something. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So you come on to say thank you. And I, to that, by the way, say you're welcome. And and to share a story a little bit. So what about this here with managing an active child with Omnipod 5? So how long has Silas had Omnipod 5?
Since July of 2022.
Oh, well, you got it pretty close to the beginning.
Oh, yeah. I was just all over that.
Okay.
Like we're getting all the stuff as soon as we can.
And
so he's been on it.
Just tell me before that, just MDI or pens or what was he doing?
So he started on pens, right from the hospital. And then he does not use as much insulin, I think, as like they expected or what kids his age do because of his activity level. And I don't know why from the hospital they gave us the 1 unit pens, which that's silly. It just shouldn't. I mean, he needed the half unit. So we struggled with that for a little bit. Finally got the end pen, which was better. I knew I wanted to put him on Omnipod just from listening to the podcast and understanding that we could do a lot with his basal rates because of his activity level. His basal it just changes constantly. Also, he had a really bad reaction to the Basaglar. Is that the gray pen? I think. He started to...
The basal insulin he had a problem with?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. He would get this big red welt around the injection site. Yeah. So really quickly, I mean, within 2 months, he was on the Dash. And we did that. So in April, he started on the Dash. And then I just kept bugging them until they let him get on the 5. But I went all through Omnipod. I hear people say like they have problems with their doctors giving them a prescription. And, my recommendation would be go through Omnipod and let them advocate for you. Let them bug the doctor, let them deal with insurance because they want people on the device. So they were such a partner with me as far as getting him as fast as possible on the devices and doing all the training. So I didn't have to wait for the doctor's office to,
Yeah. Sometimes everybody's dragging their feet, but the people who are selling it, they're very motivated.
Right. Exactly. Go through them.
Yeah. You want attention, go to the people who are getting paid. They'll hustle.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That goes for everything, by the way, not just us.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Find someone with a stake in it. They'll help you. So you wanted to use Omnipod 5. Isn't it interesting too with the all the different kinds of like, I don't know, allergies that might be kind of streaming through your family? The Basaglar was was tough for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But he hasn't had any trouble with any adhesives, though.
I mean, his skin's not great. He's always had dry skin, but he's never really had eczema, psoriasis or anything. So the winters are hard. When I take off a pod, it's usually pretty inflamed, but he can tolerate it. The problem becomes he's really lean and he only likes to wear them on his upper butt and on his thighs.
Okay.
So getting him the challenge is finding new, clean spots. So I'm Aquifer. We're just putting lots of Aquifer on.
Yeah, you and your husband are quite a little autoimmune mix here. You guys.
Yeah, it's special. It's really special. Yeah, his uncle had type 1, his brother has Graves, and then I've got lots of stuff on my side, but we didn't really know. You get married and you're like, I don't even think half the stuff had been diagnosed. I knew his uncle had died from diabetes, but I just assumed it was type 2 because I feel like that's so much more common.
For sure, people don't pay attention to stuff like this, even 20 years ago. Nobody's it was just you're itchy. That guy's got dry skin. He can't go outside in the weather, whatever.
Yeah.
Look at me. I had terrible allergies as a child. My wife has hypothyroidism. My kid has type 1 diabetes. It's not always just a cut and dry, diagnosable thing that has a name. I sneezed a lot around grass. I have, my body's, I carry inflammation in ways that I don't even think I completely understand. So, I think that all blends together.
So funny story. When my husband and I got married, his mom hands me this typed out from 1983, probably typed out on this yellowed old, paper, a list of everything that he's allergic to.
Was this after you said I do?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was so strange.
Did she say, hey?
And what do I do with this exactly?
Did she say, hey, here you go, sucker? You just bought some swampland from her and that was the deed?
Good luck. Out for nature.
Yeah. Good luck. Watch out for the gators. See ya.
Yeah.
Have you ever talked to her about that?
It was great. No.
I'd love to hear her. She was probably I was so thrilled to offload this kid's care to somebody else.
I don't know. She and I are complete and polar opposites. So
it sounds like she was worried about him and she just wanted to make sure that he was safe. But at the same time, maybe she was here's what you're in for.
He's I don't have any of that anymore. None of it. I don't know why. Okay.
Was there anything embarrassing on the list?
No, it's every tree and it's everything outside. You could basically just write outdoors.
Yeah.
And then be done with it.
Have you ever seen the movie with John Travolta where the boy lived in the bubble? This is probably your best bet.
Yeah.
Hermetically seal your house, run an air conditioner constantly. Don't let him outside. Good luck. Yeah, she didn't tell you were going to get a kid with hives, asthma, type 1 diabetes.
No.
Did you, I was going to say, did her mom hand something to your husband? She's got some, what we're going to call unspecific connective tissue disorder. He would be like, hey, that didn't come up during dating. So, oh my gosh.
Well, none of that was there yet. Nobody,
didn't know about it.
Came later.
Yeah.
I just always had stomach issues, so we should have known something was wrong.
Oh, the digestion part. That's the first sign. Don't you think?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, for sure. It was my constant struggle my entire childhood.
Christi, I always imagine people who are finding the podcast in the beginning and they just pick up an episode and they're right here and they're just sitting in their house going, oh, shit. What did he say? Digestion, bipolar. Did somebody mention bipolar disorder? What? They're making notes furiously, calling their mom. Hey, does Uncle Jim have bipolar? He does, doesn't he? I can know it. It's better to know than not to know, Christi. What's up? That's all I think. That's what I've decided. Yeah. Knowing is better. Yeah, you can be ready and at least gird your loins a little. You know. So I haven't used that as a episode title ever, but I'm dying for it to fit in somewhere. I love that phrase. Also, I don't want to out myself as liking girls' movies too much. What's the one with Devil Wears Prada? Do you know that movie? I do. I forget movies immediately after I watch them. I've seen Devil Wears Prada like a dozen times. Can't you blame that on your daughter and the fashion stuff? Some of that's ardent. I'm not going to lie. I don't think I've ever sat down and been like, finally, 2 hours to myself. What will I do? Devil Wears Prada. That doesn't happen. But there's a great line in it where Stanley Tucci, who of course is a national treasure, says, "Gird your loins." One day it's going to be an episode title. Not today, sadly, but one day. Because I'm going to run out of other stuff at some point too.
Yeah.
I'm at the point now where I name an episode and I go, I should check to make sure that hasn't been used before. And I've never once, I don't know how that happens. Like there's like 1,100 episodes.
That is really impressive.
I've never once been like, oh, call it like Purple Bananas. And then like gone, oh, I did that 3 years ago. Like it hasn't happened yet. I'm pretty impressed. So anyway, people who are new to the show must be like, he mentioned Omnipod 5 15 minutes ago. Then this lady's given her the list of stuff for the husband. And now we're talking about gird your loins. I heard Stanley Tucci in there somewhere. What the fuck is going on? Well, we're getting
I completely forgot what we were talking about, actually.
Don't worry. I got the whole thing in my head. We're doing it.
Okay.
So activity, I know from before we started recording, your son plays soccer. And
Yes.
What else does he do?
He plays basketball. He does theater as of right now. He's kind of, I don't know if that'll keep going, but he's also just, those kids who just go, like there's just something in them that is, it's like he's wound. He just has to go all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So like at recess, he's not one of those kids at recess who's like swinging on the swing or, playing, I don't know, something quietly. He's running full bore all recess. They play football or soccer every day. And the car ride home is usually about what happened during that game. And if he got passed to, or who he, intercepted, or what he's just,
I feel bad.
Anytime that there's competition, he is.
Yeah, you just go. I feel bad for you, Christy, because I've watched my son explain sporting events to my wife, and she tries so hard not to glaze over. And, she's like, so that was in what inning? And then you're saying, who hit the ball? And you did what? You caught it? And she's just trying to she's trying not to
Yeah, and I have 3 of those.
Oh, 3 boys that have like that go-go energy?
Well, 3 boys who play sports, and 2 of them have that go-go energy.
Gotcha.
One of them would prefer to just,
stop.
do nothing. But
he's forced to play sports. Yeah, because everyone else is doing it. Don't worry, he'll grow up to hate you. Is your daughter active?
No.
You said that's the way you just said that, Christy, was very telling. You're like, no.
Trying to get her to.
Good.
Oh, I'm just trying. Yeah, I would like for her to just get into some type of rhythm where she felt. I think that exercise is, if you don't build it into just your normal life, then you won't do it when you're older.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I would love for her to be a little bit more. She'll go run occasionally. She did. I mean, she danced, and then she ran track, and but now she doesn't do anything.
Yeah, the girl sports that are more like softball and like stuff that's more like kill something with something. You know what I mean? That's a specific personality. Like I don't think I've ever met one girl who played softball forever, who was very meek. Like they all, even if they were quietly so, they still were like, I don't know, like little murderers inside, like cats. You know what I mean? How you think if your cat was bigger, it would probably take out your eyes and eat them as an hors d'oeuvre. Like that kind of like that energy behind them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe she just doesn't have that going on, right?
She doesn't. She's a very strong personality. She's really tenacious, but she's more like, she's editor-in-chief of the school yearbook.
Oh, cool.
So she loves to be in charge. She's very creative, but she doesn't like,
Christy, you said she loves to be in charge?
Oh, yeah.
I heard you tell me she was a girl earlier. You didn't have to repeat yourself.
And the oldest. And it has 3 little brothers.
No, I get what's going on. Also, I can't wait for the one review that calls me a misogynist now for joking like that. But whatever. People have no free, it's too much free time. So you're looking for something for her that's more exercisey and less activity, right? Because she's not like into like that. Yeah. So you have to. That's tough.
When she goes to college and they have the
gym,
rec center or whatever. Yeah, I think she'll do that. I've just been encouraging her.
Would you like me to tell you the story of 6 months ago when Arden FaceTimed me all red in her face? And I was like, what are you doing? She goes, Kaylee and I went to the gym. And I was like, yeah. I was like, how was it? She goes, they're really nice. They got a lot of good equipment. And she's like huffing and puffing and walking back to her room and everything. And I said, what are you guys going to go on a schedule? She goes, no, I think that's the last time we're going to do
it. One and done. Perfect.
She's like, it was a lot. And I was like, gotcha. She goes, I'm so out of shape. She's like, she said to me, I don't think I could go play softball right now. And I was like, yeah, you don't look like it. So, yeah. So anyway, you keep hoping.
Yeah.
Go to college and take up a sport. How about you guys? Are you active people, you and your husband?
Yes.
Okay. So you're hoping to lead by example, maybe?
Yeah. I do like a sort of CrossFit type thing. It's not as hardcore as CrossFit, but nobody does that with me, but they see me go every day. But I think that just having that where they know that that's my habit. And then my husband played every sport under the sun, and he coaches our boys in basketball, and
nice.
He plays more like things are starting to give out, but
I love your hopeful nature. Like, they see me go do it. There's a case study, by the way, where you walk out of the house, then the rest of them get together in the kitchen and go, she's out of her mind. Are you burning?
I probably do think that.
No, please. Are you burning off some of that? Like, I mean, there's a lot going on around you, like a lot of health stuff, a lot of things to keep track of. You're trying to stay kind of zen about it for your own health reasons. Is that what the exercise is for? Are you offloading that anxiety there?
I think for sure. I'm not a very introspective person, so I don't feel a lot of anxiety. I shouldn't say, I don't think like in my brain a lot of anxiety. It ends up coming out in physical symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that the exercise, so I was active through like college, let's say, and then I started having a lot of health issues. So I really stopped until I was in like my late 30s, and I saw a picture of myself and I was like, oh, my arms, oh my gosh. And then some of my friends had bought this gym, just like perfect timing. So Ben, my husband and I both started going then. At the same time, my parents were going through they were kind of a hot mess. So I needed a place to get out some anger in a healthy way. And that's when I started going, and I just haven't stopped. So all this has happened since, I've been there for the last 6 years, I think.
Yeah.
And a lot of life has happened since then, but it's and I have that's a lot of my community is there, and I love it.
Nice. That's excellent. So I'm hearing that in an attempt to not push your parents off a cliff, you started working out. Is that what I heard?
Yeah. That's basically right.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. They still together?
Yeah.
Oh,
they are.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Had the same tone as, is your daughter active? No.
Yeah.
By the way, possibly one of the most honest things anybody's ever said unprompted on here is, I'm not a very introspective person.
Well, I'll be honest.
Do you think you could like murder a puppy and just get past it? No problem? Or like, what do you mean? Like how much what are we talking about exactly?
I think it's usually good.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just interested in what you mean by it.
I don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out how I'm feeling. I think that...
On purpose?
No.
Okay.
It's just how I am.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone asks me, I can figure it out. It just isn't something like I couldn't just, immediately tell you. And I think that a lot of people, and I don't think this is it can be may get stereotyped as a male-female thing because it's probably more women than men. But I think that a lot of times women specifically, but it can also be men, to not just have a lot of thoughts. Like there's just a lot happening in their brain.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll kind of say, well, men don't do that. But I'm probably more like that side where I don't necessarily have like a ton of things running through my brain all the time.
It's interesting. I was out the other day with Kelly, and we were talking about this because there were some people with some very far away looks on their face. You know what I mean? And
yes, I do.
Like maybe they weren't thinking about anything. And I remarked to Kelly, I was like, look how relaxed that guy looks. I said, I'm thinking about 7 different things right now while we're walking through this store. I was like, it's crazy to believe that that's not how everybody brain works. I mean, I know it's not, but still for me, like I was literally walking around thinking about something I had to do for the podcast. Arden needs an apartment for college. We are looking for some certain foods. There's things I can't say in the grocery store because they get me in trouble with my wife. And I have to stop myself because, I mean, it's only been 30 years, but I have not yet shown an ability to just not say it. And, I'm doing all these different things and having all these different thoughts. And I like having a conversation while we're walking around and everything. And then I just looked over at somebody that looked like they were like just a half a second away from drooling on themselves. And I thought, God, that looks nice. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way that guy right now is worried about what's going to be on the podcast 3 weeks from now. like, you know, I understand. I think I know what you're saying. Like, so you're not unaware of how you feel. You don't spend a lot of time mulling it over. If I asked you about it, you could tell me. So you're more of a person that you consider yourself sort of like a head down, get things done person. No. Okay.
No, I really don't. No, I'm not very. No, my poor husband. He'd love that if I was more.
Do you have a job? Do you work?
Yes. Well, we own a couple businesses.
Oh.
So I'm more of like a future thinker, big idea person.
I'm an ideas man, Scott. So what does that mean? Where we're going on vacation next year? Like that kind of thing? Or
I mean, yes, but planning it. I would rather someone else plan it for me because I don't really care about the details. That's one thing that's been a challenge with diabetes is that it's so in the weeds, it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been probably the most draining part. I love problem solving. Like, I think that's fun. If you give me a problem, I like to help I like us finding a solution. That to me is like enjoyable.
But not the day-to-day stuff? The
day-to-day stuff can be, it can be very draining.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I'm just so committed to the big picture. I think I'm just looking forward and saying, if we figure this out well now, then when he's 20 and on his, in college, he's just learned to expect to have, low variation and to have a good A1C, and he feels good at a lower blood sugar and, like all these things. So I'm just always kind of balancing this. I'm here now doing the like nitty gritty of making sure that his blood sugar is stable. Sure. And that has every opportunity here. But I'm also thinking, I just want that to be his expectation. So when he's taking care of himself, that's what he's doing.
No, I think it's a great idea to set up expectations so that they become norms. That's really terrific. I'm just literally laughing to myself because, again, you've been incredibly honest. You're like, look, I'll have the ideas, but I don't want to facilitate them. Like,
I don't.
Yeah. It's interesting. Have you always been like that?
Yes.
Interesting.
And like my room was always a mess growing up, and we've always, our entire marriage, we've had to have separate closets because my husband's very tidy and very organized and very, like, he's the doer, and I'm the one who has like we always buy fixer-upper houses. It's one of these things we do. Mm-hmm. The house we're in now, we're in the middle of working on, and I'll have, I'm usually the one who's like, this is what I want it to look like. And he wants more details and more information. And then he's the one who actually does the work.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, I understand. Again, I think pretty honest because you were just like, I don't really do that much. So, then I do a lot. I know you do. Yeah, but not the stuff that nobody wants to do.
Yeah, I really try to stay away from that.
Yeah, because Christi, that's the truth of it is that I don't think anybody wants to do those things. I think some people see it and do it, and I think some people see it and go, "Ooh, God, I hope somebody else does that."
Well, some people get more satisfaction out of it being done.
That's the thing you tell yourself to make yourself feel better, I think, because
maybe
my wife tries that on me all the time. She goes, "Do you enjoy cutting the lawn?" And I go, "No." What are you talking about? She goes, "You don't like being alone?" I was like, "No, I like being alone." She goes, "Yeah, for an hour every week you get to be alone." I'm like, "Yeah, that part's great." She goes, "Do you like cutting the lawn?" I'm like, "No, I could be alone somewhere else. I don't cutting the lawn." Like for years, I think she thought I liked that. But then I really looked at it, I was like, she doesn't think I like that. She just wants to tell herself he's out there having a good time. So she didn't have to feel bad about it. And just for clarity, I am not having a good time. It's a lot. It's hot and sticky and dirty and I come back inside. I'm like, don't touch me. I have to get immediately into the shower. I'm covered in dust and dirt. And she's like, "Did you have fun?" What are you talking about?
Well, that's what I tell my kids all the time. They're like, "Oh, I don't want to do this homework, or I don't want to do, I didn't do anything fun today." I'm like, "Yeah, that's life."
Well,
you think I like doing the dishes 3 times a day, or I don't really like thinking about what we have to have for dinner every night. You guys are hungry constantly.
Yeah.
Like I'm constantly having to think of something to feed you.
Stop eating.
That's what we do because I love you and I want you to have.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm not making dinner for fun. I used to tell my kids, I'm like, look, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't even eat tonight. I have to be completely honest. I'm like, I just out of my own self-preservation, I would skip this meal just so I had some time to do anything. I don't think time is it's so valuable. And like, I got up this morning and I was up pretty early. I had a meeting this morning with a new sponsor who, by the time this comes out, you'll know Eversense CGMs. There's a new sponsor of the podcast. Oh. Very lovely. I'm having a meeting, figuring out their messaging and how to talk about their products and stuff like that. And, I had a little meal, and then I was standing there cooking, and I was going to get on with you. And I was like, oh God, by the time I get off with her, it's going to be 1:30. I got so much more work to do. It's crazy how at noon, I already feel like I'm running out of time. Yeah, it's really something. I got to get a wife like you who doesn't do anything to give me more stuff to do. I'm just teasing. I know you do things. I'm just teasing. What I wanted to know is around that idea, how does that relate to diabetes though? Like, are you the one who's like, hey, you got to change your pump on time? Or are you the one actually pulling it out of the drawer going, hey, come here, Silas, we got to do this now?
Yeah, no, I do it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I forget though. And he'll be the one who's like, hey mom, we need to change my pod. I put everything in my calendar so I don't, forget all the dates that we have to change all the things. The pod is the one that'll get me. His CGM is hard to get it to last a full 10 days. So I'm usually right on top of that because I can see it's like, failing or he's still with the G6 because, Omnipod 5 still doesn't do G7.
Yep.
So there's no grace period. So it's like, well, when it's over, it's over.
Christi,
and he doesn't like to go.
Right now it's in a limited market release, G7 with Omnipod 5. So,
what?
Yeah. So it's coming pretty quick, I think.
Okay, good. Because
if it's in an LMR, then they think it works and they're trying it in a small population. So it's got to be close now.
Glad.
Yeah.
That would be great.
But what are you saying with the G6? Like, are you saying when the adhesive starts to fail or when the readings aren't good anymore?
The readings just start to drop. Like I can tell when it's getting a little wonky, it'll like his line will look a certain way and then it'll just drop down like, 15 by 15 and then it'll pop back up.
Yeah. And you're like,
that's usually how. So I'm like, drink a bunch of water and let's see if we can get this to last the rest of the day or,
Yeah. It actually, because with all the talk of allergies in your family, like that doesn't surprise me because the way I feel about that is that sensor wire obviously looks like a foreign object to your body. And if your body's already on a heightened alert for things like that, doesn't it like attack with like white blood cells and like, you know what I mean? Like that makes sense to me that you'd have more trouble.
Yeah,
with
that does make sense.
Yeah. I think that's like what we don't talk about a lot is that these devices are all very contingent on your body chemistry. And, because some people will say things like, I'd never have any trouble with it. And, Arden's on a G7. She wears it into its grace period every week. Like, the amount of times I've heard her say this has to come off, this thing isn't working is like once in the last 7 months. So she just doesn't have that trouble.
That's great.
Yeah. But it's random whether, other people will have trouble with stuff like that. But,
Yeah. And I think his has a lot to do with hydration.
Really?
Because he's a little boy. Yeah. He's a little boy and he forget, when my kids grow up, if they're going to say, what's the most annoying thing your mom said to you? One of them is going to be, do you have your water?
Drink more. But listen, I'm not a little boy and I'm holding the water that I gave myself 4 hours ago. It looks like I've taken 3 sips out of it. So I'm right there with him.
Let's just stay hydrated, please. It'll help so much with all the things.
You have no idea how quickly it changed. So I'm very in tune now with my much more paying attention to my body. I think now that I'm using a GLP medication, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so last week, this has got to do with hydration, but last week I decided I'm going to make potato chips like from scratch for the Super Bowl. So I wake up on Saturday morning and I take 5 pounds of russet potatoes and I mandolin them down into these little thin slices. And then I leach out all the, I don't know if people have ever done this before. You soak them in cold water and you rinse them till they run clean. You pat them dry and then actually like kind of squeeze them out dry so that they'll fry right and fry them and salt them, put them in a bag, blah, blah, blah. So this is not a thing I do very often. And obviously there's a lot of salt involved that normally isn't involved with my life. I probably ate a handful of chips in the 5 hours. And people are like, did it take 5 hours to make potato chips? It did. I probably had a handful of chips in like the 5 hours it took me to make the chips. And then because they were there, I had a couple with dinner and I had them the next day during the Super Bowl. and not a lot of them. Now, I woke up Monday morning over 2 pounds heavier than I was on Saturday morning when I got up.
Oh my goodness.
It's just the salt. And so like, as soon as I realize that, I start like overhydrating myself and watch the weight just pour off of me again. Like in those 2 pounds, even a tiny bit of dehydration or, too much salt or little things like that really can throw your body off. It's fascinating. If you're not paying attention to it, you would notice, because I don't look any different Monday than I looked on Saturday, but I can tell what was going on because I'm tracking my weight more specifically. Anyway, it was kind of interesting, and nobody's hydrated the way they should be, in all honesty.
Okay, that made me think of something.
Go ahead.
Sorry, this is another tangent, but I've been listening to your Wegovy episodes, and when you cried in the Wegovy episode, and then later you apologized for crying in it, I just wanted to say, I don't think you need to apologize, because I think that your genuine emotions were really powerful, and it really helped me. Like, I've never been one to struggle with my weight, and I've never understood it. And I think it can be such a taboo topic that you sharing vulnerably and helping just explain your perspective and it's been like to battle that, it helped me understand so much better. And I think one thing that I've learned from diabetes and from like listening to your podcast is I think that it has opened up the door for me, and I think a lot of people, to just be more compassionate and see the world through other people's eyes better. And that episode for me was very powerful. And I think I cried along with you.
Oh, well, sorry I made you cry.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. I appreciate your sentiment very much. It's not an apology. Like, I don't know what it is. I think it's the part of me that knows I'm making a podcast. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I know you're there to hear something, and me like fall apart might not be part of it. But I take your point about how valuable it is as well. I mean, I obviously could have cut it out if I wanted to, but I see how it's valuable for people. It is a thing, no different than when you wear your pump in public or test your blood sugar in public. You're helping to spread awareness about it. Like, there's no way for you to know like what that feels like. Like, I still can't adequately put words to how I feel just sitting here right now. I'm like 45 pounds lighter than I was almost a year ago. I can't explain to you what a joy that is yet, or how much better I feel, like physically or like mentally, or what a relief it is to go out in the world and not wonder, like, am I wearing the right color shirt so that I don't look fat? And then realizing now in hindsight, looking back at pictures, it didn't make a goddamn bit of difference what color shirt I was in. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I've got all this worry about like colors and cuts and, that kind of stuff to try to hide the fact that I know I'm carrying extra weight. And meanwhile, I look back at these pictures, like, it didn't matter what I was wearing. None of it hid anything. It didn't matter. You know what I mean? So that's a psychological shell you're putting on. Not to have to worry about that is freeing. Really cool. Like, it's aesthetically nice, but it's got so much more to do with just not feeling encumbered than it does about what you look like. And I've also been in that situation. I was talking to Jenny yesterday. We were privately talking about GLP a little bit. And I said to her, Jenny, I've been chubby since I was 5. That was 1976. There wasn't a lot of fast food. There wasn't a lot of like things that we all now today connect with people being overweight. Like, it's just how my body works, which is to say, not well, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then you add this GLP in, and then suddenly that's not a problem anymore. And you're like, you're just lucky I'm not over here like banging my head against the wall about like, how come they couldn't have come out with this 40 years ago? Because there's a lot of monumental steps in my family's life that there are photos of that I'm not in, because I was taking the pictures, but I was probably also taking the pictures to keep myself out of the pictures, and then there's like these real big ones where you just suck it up and get in the photo. Arden sent me a photo of her high school graduation the other day, keeping in mind she's halfway through her sophomore year. And it's a picture of her and I at her high school graduation. I got to tell you, I don't even recognize the person that I apparently walked around and I was. Like, I don't even think I could share it online. I want to say, not because I would be scared to share it, but there are some people who don't like that I talk about, take insulin for what you eat. And sometimes they'll be mean to me online. I'm not looking to give them pictures of myself looking terrible, but I'm telling you, a photo of me yesterday and a photo from me 2 years ago, it would really stun you. So it's not like I was out there eating like crazy. Like, I know I said I just made potato chips from scratch, but it's a thing I've done like once a year. You know what I mean? Not like a thing I do every day or something like that.
Well, I mean, yeah, if it takes 5 hours, that doesn't sound like a reasonable thing to do.
You know, those Saturday mornings when like everyone's asleep and you get up early and you're like, let me do something. It takes time, but I can kind of go slow with, and yeah, that kind of thing. Again, I don't know that I'm eating much differently now than I was before. I mean, I've cut like seed oils out of my life, but I had done that prior to GLP and it didn't really help me. It didn't help me with my weight at all. It helped me in other ways, and I'm still happy not to do it. But honestly, not a lot is different. So, you know, and I appreciate you saying so. I appreciate that you're listening to my weight loss diary when you don't need to lose weight. That's very nice too. Thank you for keeping up the downloads.
Well, it's been kind of controversial, you know? And so I wanted to hear your perspective on it, because
I think it's controversial amongst people who don't know what the they're talking about.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, there's been kind of I was in a conversation with some friends about it the other day, and it was just good for me to be able to share a different perspective.
Oh, I'm glad.
And then have a friend who honestly said, you know, I would consider it. And, you know, she kind of shared her struggles, and I thought that was good, because I don't know if she would have felt like she had a voice if I hadn't.
To be able to speak up. Oh, that's really wonderful. I hope it helps her. Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between comedians and, you know, guys and bro guys on their podcasts, like being like, oh, you know, just work harder. Like, you know what I mean? Like that guy. I get up every day. Let me tell you my day. I get up at 4 a.m. I cold plunge. Then I do a sauna. Then I run 75 miles. Do you understand? Then I have tantric sex. And then I'm like, okay, you're making $9 million a year on your podcast. Right. Like, so like you've got a lot of free time, and I'm happy for you. And then what do I do then? I have tuna, right? I love tuna. I have a little bit of tuna. And then we go out, we bow hunt. Then we kill something. It's great. You're like, you know, like, I'm like, okay. And Ozempic is cheating. Good for you. Like I'm glad it worked out for you. Like, you genetic freak. I'm happy it all worked out for you. I ate well and exercised, and that all kept me chubby at best. You know what I mean? Like, I was telling Jenny the other day, I used to work out twice a day for 2 hours a day in my early 20s just to maintain a chubby visage. Like, seriously, like just to keep my weight at like 220 pounds. And that was, it just didn't matter. Like, I don't know what's wrong with my body. It just didn't work, you know?
Yeah.
And then to hear people say like, oh, like, you know, they're going to Ozempify the world. Like, maybe that's not a terrible thing. Like, maybe the people who, like, I'm not just saying spread it on everybody who could just go for a walk and things would change for them. I want those people out walking. I want to be out walking too. But if people genuinely have a GLP deficiency or something like that, and that all the exercising in the world's not going to help them, then what are we doing? Making them feel badly for getting healthy. And it's no effort whatsoever. It's like, click, done. I'll see you in 7 days, you know? And I'm going to hear from people who are like, well, I tried it and my digestion was, and everything doesn't work for everybody. Like, I'm not saying that, you know, like you might take, somebody's immediately going to say, Google GLP and what are they going to say? Intestinal blockage. And I'm like, all right, well, you don't know any of the details of that, but okay. Yeah, that could be a person who's, you know, pre-diabetic. They might have gastroparesis and not know it. And then you slow down their digestion more with the medication and it caused a blockage. I mean, that's terrible. They definitely shouldn't take the medicine. That's what happened, you know? So, but yeah, I know the bigger thing you're talking about is just people's attitude of like, oh, that's fat people who don't want to shut their mouth. So they're going to take an injection and get skinny. And that shouldn't be how this works. And by the way, even if that's the situation, what do you care? Like, you know what I mean? But, but I, you know, I understand where they're coming from, but it's very often not actually what's happening.
Right.
It's not what was happening for me. So anyway, also, you know, I know a person right now who's type 2 and has a weight issue and took a GLP medication. And a year later confided in me that I lost my way with the eating. Like, I was doing better with the eating because the medicine kept me from eating as much. And they lost like 35 pounds. And but here's the thing. The A1C went from in the 7s to in the 5s.
Yeah.
And then they said, I think I got to go to a therapist. And I asked why. And And this person said, well, because I'm eating terribly again. And I don't know why. I'm just eating bad foods. Like they're up to the part in the medication where it's not that hard to eat. You can eat through it, is the way I usually put it. Like you're full, but you're not so full that you couldn't eat if you wanted to. So this person said, maybe I need to see a therapist because I don't know why I'm eating like this. And I said, that's a good idea. You should do that. But guess what? In the meantime, you know what their A1C still is? It's in the 5s. It's in the 5s, and they didn't gain any weight. And
that's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah. So,
yeah.
Sorry. Anyway, that was a lot of talking for me. I apologize.
No, you're great. You're good.
Do you have anything else we haven't spoken about?
Okay. I had a couple of things I wanted to just share with you. Okay. One thing was that you've talked about a few times too. These are my little encouragements I wanted to share with you, is when you've sometimes said you're sometimes discouraged that you're not helping enough people because the people with access are the ones who are.
Yeah.
And I agree. I feel like good management of type 1 it takes a lot of knowledge that a lot of people don't have. And it takes, I think, the technology that a lot of people don't have access to. But I think that the part you're doing is multiplicative. Like you share with me, and then I'm sharing with friends, yes, sharing the podcast, but also just sharing what I've learned, then trying to do some outreach with JDRF with new families. And then I think one thing that was eye-opening was when we had our foster kids, they had a lot of some deficits, especially around math. And so now I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think one day, like I want to figure out how to help people who don't have those. Like they don't have, like my 9-year-old could count his carbs and tell you how, like he knew his carb ratio and he knew how to do that at 9. That's not normal. It's not normal I know that a lot of the people struggle with that even as adults. And so I think that what we're doing is, I think that you're creating a movement, and I think that movement will continue to reach more and more people in more and more diverse socioeconomic levels and all over, because this vision of how do we help one another and share victories and not just share, frustration. So I don't know what it'll look like in the future, but having those sweet foster kids, seeing like, I don't know how they got type 1. How would they manage, and how would their mom definitely wouldn't be able to,
right.
You know what I mean? Like how do we help people in the margins?
Yeah. They'd be on a fast path to some bad health problems.
Right. And all because they just don't have the education or the access.
Yeah.
And what do we do about that? So,
well, I want you to know that when you'll hear me sometimes say like, I'm not doing enough, or I'm not reaching enough people, like that's a momentary frustration because I'm in it constantly. Like every day, Monday through Friday, I get up in the morning, I do the things around my house that everyone else does, and then I make this podcast. And I do that all day long in one way or the other, like Monday through Friday and oftentimes on the weekends. It is my job, but it's also a lot to do with my life. And when you have a moment, like you put out, like, remaster the Pro Tip series and put it back out again, and you see it downloaded, you see each episode downloaded like 20,000 times. And you're like, oh my God, it's amazing. Right up until you realize that there's 1.8 million people with type 1 diabetes in America. And you go, oh, 20,000. I didn't do anything. And then the bigger picture comes up and you recognize like there are people that are sent to the podcast every day or to the group from doctor's offices. So that means that somebody in a doctor's office listens to this show and talks about diabetes and insulin in a way that's valuable for people, and that will, like you're talking about, like grow very slowly. And then I think that feels good. And I'm like, okay, good. Because in generations to come, I'll have had a real impact on this, but I'm also 52. So, I'll probably be dead. And then, I'm going to be like, I would like to see it once. You know what I mean? Like, I'd like to see it like work out. I guess that's not really how things like this work, but anyway, you've also named the episode finally, Multiplicative.
Oh, wow. Okay.
What a funny word. That's definitely going to be the title of the episode.
Okay. I like that word, actually.
I love it. You like whipped it out like,
multiplication is amazing.
I use this word all the time. And I was like, I pride myself on having a fairly large vocabulary. When you said it, I was like, she made that up. she made up a word or she said a word wrong and she's just cruising over it. And I love the attitude. I love that. I'm just going to say multiplicative and keep going. And then I looked it up and I was like, God damn, that's an actual word. So for sure, that's the title of the episode. But okay, don't worry. I'm not over here like crucifying myself. It's just every once in a while when you're really like in the nitty gritty of it. How have I built the most popular diabetes podcast in the world? And it's never once had a leap. It always just grows consistently, which is not something anybody who wants growth knows not to complain about consistent growth. I'm certainly not. But like, could I not just wake up one day and 20,000 new people have found the podcast? But it's never going to happen like that. It's always going to be 5, 10, 50 new people a day. It's just going to go like that, So
unless, okay, this is my other thought.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you were, I'm sure you recorded it a long time ago, but it just came out, the episode with Gregory. He was the fisher.
Out to sea.
On the fisherman.
Yeah.
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 Okay, and you talked about the app, your app idea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, my thought was, if you can do an app like that, then it could be translated to different languages, I would think. So that could break your language barrier.
Yeah, I'm already doing that with AI stuff behind the scenes. I haven't really put it up yet. I've done key takeaways from the Pro Tip series through AI. So you'd be surprised, or you might not be surprised, how accurately AI can pull the key takeaways out of it. When you look at the list, it sounds like you went up to me and said, hey, tell me the key takeaways from episode 1000. And everything I would think to say is right there. It's fascinating. So then I said to it, give me the key takeaways in English, Spanish, and Hindi. I chose those, right? And then boom, it spits them right out.
That's awesome.
I don't speak Spanish and I don't speak Hindi, but I have pretty big Spanish and Hindi like listening populations, like who are multilingual. And so I'm like, well, how do I make sure this is right? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it as easy as putting a disclaimer on it and saying, hey, this is AI generated, it might not be right? Or do you ask somebody to proof it? Then, it's not a thing I can afford to pay a proofreader. So, and you can't hold them to task. Like, what if they get it wrong? Like that kind of idea. So those are the kind of like the leaps you have to make. What I think I'm landing on is just like, look, here's the disclaimer. These are key takeaways from episode 1000 as derived by AI and translated by AI. I cannot be certain that any of this is accurate or in any way, shape, or form, you're reading it at your own risk. Like, I think that's what I have to do if I want to put it out. But I do think it would help a lot of people because I get a lot of, especially just from the Indian population. They're like, you have no idea how big, because I have a pretty big following in India. They're like, but not enough people speak English enough to listen to the podcast. So those are big idea things that are more possible now with technology. And then you just have to you got to wrap your head around how you're going to introduce them to people. And then once they're out there in the world, Christi, the next trouble is to again, it's spreading it. Now you're down to one person telling another person and then waiting for that exponential but very slow growth to happen. And that's, I'm not going to outlive that. You know what I mean? But I do think it's completely possible that 15 years from now, somebody in India will learn how to use an insulin pump because of me and I won't know anything about it. So it's kind of that. Anyway, what else you got?
Okay. Last thing. I think that one reason that people resonate with you so much, and I've heard you ask a couple ladies about why you had such a large Christian population who listens to your podcast.
Okay.
Because you're not. Okay.
Yeah.
And part of the reason is your story is so redemptive because you took a really heartbreaking situation and you turned it into hope. You turned it into hope for all of us who got this life-altering diagnosis and heard your story and saw what you'd done with it and saw how well your daughter was doing and said, you can do this too. So I think that it's very inspirational. I think that every Christian resonates around this idea of redemption. And you're preaching a different gospel. It's not the gospel of Jesus Christ, but it's the gospel. It's a good news. It's like good news to us, to anybody, to say you can turn this, and you've made something really good out of it, which is so inspirational to say, oh, now what do I do? Like what Silas, my 11-year-old, I wish he could have come to talk to you, but he wants to be an endocrinologist. And he's like, he always wanted to be a doctor. And now, because he wants to help people like he's been helped.
Right.
And I just think that it resonates so much with us. But I think that's one reason people are so drawn to you and everything that you share, because you said it. What did you? I think that once I knew I was going to be on the podcast, I like started picking up little things. But what did you say recently about? You said something about how you thought, it might be that same episode, but you might have ended up being the better person to make a podcast like this than someone who actually had type 1, because you can be a little more positive.
Well, I find that I can be dispassionate about it because it's not happening to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that is actually redemptive too.
Really?
That feels more, because it feels more like what I think what you're saying, it just seems more hopeful in some ways.
You know, there's one person listening to this right now who's about to text me and say, you're going to be on a candle one day. And I won't tell you who that person is, but we have
well,
this.
I'm not Catholic.
No, we have this little back and forth. Like, it's not a joke, but this person will say to me sometimes, those people would put you on a candle if they could. And she's meaning the little religious candles that you get in the grocery store. And I guess
I know exactly what she's meaning.
And I think that's very nice. She's like, the way some people talk about you sometimes. And I was like, oh, first of all, it's lovely, but like just joking between me and one other person. But I hear what you're saying. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I hear you.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Wait, that's not what you were saying? I might have misunderstood. No. I think I'm following you. This terrible thing happens to you. You kind of rise above it. Then you walk out into the world and try to help other people not have to go through the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, it will sound weird for me to say, but I agree with you. I think that's a good reason why people would resonate with the podcast in general. But I have wondered, like, at times, like, I am very much, and Christi, I don't mean this in a pejorative way, but I am not a religious person. Like, not at all. Like, if you asked me if I thought there was a God, I would definitely tell you no. I don't think after I die, I'm going anywhere. Like, I don't hold any of those feelings or beliefs. But people who do often feel very close to me. And that's a great insight. I appreciate it very much.
Well, you're welcome.
Thank you. Also, I am also not a, what's the word when you don't believe at all? Atheist, yeah. Because trust me, I know myself. If like I get hit by a truck and I open my eyes back up and there's like pearly gates or something and I'm like signing up like a registration book or something like that, I will start backpedaling 100 miles an hour. Oh my God. I will be like, I'll start my own podcast in heaven about how wrong Scott was about heaven. I'll be like, I don't want anybody to take that personally. I was just going off my best. It's the best I could tell. I'm a fouled person. Like, trust me, I would be fallible, right? Fouled would be different. Fouled would be if I poop my pants, right? Like, yeah, it's not that. But no, I would backpedal 100 miles an hour. People would be like, "Holy shit, he's going back in time. He's talking so fast." I'd be like, I know, really, Paul, you might have heard me tell that joke about the missionary position in your buddy one day, but I was just fucking around, man. Just like, trying to make a fun podcast so people would listen to it and learn about their diabetes. That's all. Anyway, you're very nice to say that. I appreciate it. I'm going to get off now because the editor's going to charge me extra for how long this is.
Okay, sure.
Okay, all right. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
This episode of the Juicebox Podcast was sponsored by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Get started today with US Med. Links in the show notes, links at juiceboxpodcast.com. A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeGlucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. Mark is an incredible example of what so many experience living with diabetes. You show up for yourself and others every day, never letting diabetes define you. And that is what the Medtronic Champion community is all about. Each of us is strong, and together we're even stronger. To hear more stories from the Medtronic Champion community or to share your own story, visit medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox. All right, kids, we're done. We're at the end. Just do me one last favor, if you can, if you could, please. If you have the need or the desire for something that one of the sponsors is providing, please use my links or my offer codes. They help the show so much, and that means me. You're helping me to make this podcast every day. You're helping me to support the private Facebook group, do all the things that I'm doing. I'm not asking you to buy something you don't want or something you don't need, but if you're going to get one of these items, use my links or my offer codes. They help me a ton. Thank you so much for listening and for supporting. I really do genuinely appreciate it. I'll be back very soon with another episode. Hey, what's up, everybody? If you've noticed that the podcast sounds better and you're thinking like, how does that happen? What you're hearing is Rob at Wrong Way Recording doing his magic to these files. So if you want him to do his magic to you, wrongwayrecording.com. You got a podcast? You want somebody to edit it? You want Rob.